We are recording the interview of Dan Hendrix. This interview is being conducted by James Hale from Wright State University Veterans Voices Project. The interview is being recorded at Veterans Military Center at Wright State University in Fairborn, Ohio. It is 3 p.m. on 19 May 2017. Sir, where and when were you born?
Born in Anderson, South Carolina on October the 28th, 1947.
Who are your parents and what are their occupations?
Both parents deceased. Father W.A. Walter Alfred Hendrix, and mother was Drucy Inez Hendrix.
Did you have any siblings?
Yes, I had one brother who's also deceased.
Did he serve in the military at all?
Did he?
Yes, sir.
Yes, he served in the United States Air Force.
Air Force. All right. And
My father served in the Navy.
okay, so you come from a family of military then?
Correct.
All right. Did you join because of them, or?
I think that had a large part in my decision to join. My father was a World War II vet and from the Navy. And I believe that played into my decision at the time.
Okay. And what branch did you join?
I joined the Air Force.
The Air Force as well? Smart man. What were you doing before you entered the service?
What was I going to be?
What were you doing before you entered? Like high school?
High
working?
school.
Just high
I
school?
went in right after graduation from high school.
Okay. So you were 18 when you joined the military? Alrighty. Were you active duty?
Yes.
All right. And then why did you choose the Air Force?
I felt like the Air Force offered better educational possibilities for me after school. My family wasn't rich, so college was not exactly on our horizon. And I felt like if I could get the military behind me and get some training in the military, I'd be better off.
Okay. What did you do while you were in the military? What was your...
Well, my MOS was 90250. Well, started out as a 90230. Aeromedical evacuation specialist. I went to medical school for the Air Force in Gunner Air Force Base in Alabama in 1965. And moved from there to my first duty assignment, which was Pope Air Force Base in North Carolina, middle of Fort Bragg. I was assigned to the 21st Airvac Unit, or Squadron. And less than a year at Pope, but a little over a year at Pope. Then we got our orders to ship out.
Okay. What was basic training like for you?
For me, it was unique and different. I'd never been forced to do so much exercise in my life. But it was good. Matter of fact, my parents couldn't make it to graduation in Texas. Too far for them. But they did come to Alabama when I graduated from medical school, MSS 66F. And my mother almost walked right by me as I was walking to them. She just didn't have any idea who this guy was with the ramrod straight back and maybe 50 pounds lighter.
Do you recall any instructors?
Excuse me?
Do you recall any of your instructors in basic?
Honestly, no. I can see their faces, but I can't. The names just don't come forward. Diaz was a secondary instructor in Alabama because we were still considered in semi-basic, going through medical school, and had an Airman Diaz who was our barracks instructor.
Okay. And you said your mom didn't recognize you when she seen you again?
No, she honestly didn't. She wasn't looking for that me. She was looking for the old me. I guess she had no idea how much change the United States government could make on you.
Right.
But it all turned out for the good, though. She's very proud.
That's good to hear. Well, what would you say changed the most from being, a civilian to being in the military?
Pardon?
I'm sorry. What would you say changed the most from being a civilian to being in the military?
My thought processes. I actually, like most kids, I react first, think later, especially high school kids. And in the military, I learned to evaluate first and then act, if possible, if you have time. But military gives you the initiative and the training to, if you have to react first, you do it in the proper way.
Okay. And then you said you graduated medical school. Was that in the military?
That was military, yes.
Okay.
That was Air Force.
Okay. Did you receive any other kind of specialized training?
Yes. We were taught basic medical training all the way from sutures to CPR to amputations, how to perform one if necessary, cricothyotomies, how to get open an airway with a ballpoint pen if you had to, basic illnesses that people come in contact with. Because this one course not only covered ARVAC at a later stage, but it covered the regular corpsmen who worked in the hospitals, worked in the clinics, throughout the Air Force.
Okay. You said you did ARVAC training?
Yes.
Okay.
I moved from basic medical training at Gunner Air Force Base into ARVAC training. ARVAC training was, back then, it was basically called combat medical training. And you were taught how to move efficiently and expediently with a litter while under fire. You were taught how to treat combat wounds more than coughs and colds, and other combat injuries. And if necessary, as I mentioned before, about how to amputate a limb if you have to save a life. And so it was extremely unique, and it was intensive.
Where all did you serve at?
After Gunner Air Force Base, as I said, then went to my first permanent duty assignment, which was Pope Air Force Base in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, or Fayetteville, North Carolina. And there was assigned to the 21st AirVac Squadron, Aeromedical Evacuation Squadron. And we, at the time, didn't have a function, so to speak. We were trained for it, but nobody wanted it or used it. I mean, the Army had their MASH units. You might remember those from TV show MASH.
Yes, sir.
But that's basically what they had. But even then, they could treat people, but they couldn't do anything with them. They had no procedure for moving mass casualties out of the combat zone, which is what we train specifically for, to go to a combat zone. If we know that an offensive is going to take place, set up our unit, and then triage the wounded, and then move them out en masse, and get them that way. You save more lives getting them back to a rear hospital. But we did a lot of painting in warehouses, inventory and re-inventorying equipment. Just general military style of make work details. Where
Right.
you're waiting on something to do.
Yep, stay busy.
Yeah. And so if it don't, that hints to a saying, if it don't move, paint it. But it was October of, no, it was March. Well, actually it was February of '67. We got our orders that we were being combined with the 22nd Aerovac out of Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in Tennessee. And as one consolidated unit, we were moving en masse equipment and personnel to Vietnam.
Okay. What are some memories that you had of your experiences deployed?
For when?
Of your experiences when you were deployed? What are...
19-year-old kid grew up in a hell of a hurry.
Yeah, I bet.
And you learned a lot about life in general. First, you learned that from the people you work with, because they come from all walks of life. But you learned a lot more about life when you started trying to treat these other young kids, 19, 20 years old, that have been out in the field and been hurt. You try to do everything possible to save them. And there were times that we had to treat North Vietnamese or Viet Cong.
Really?
Oh yeah, our intelligence agencies would bring some in if they'd been wounded because they wanted to question them. And our job was simply to keep them alive while they questioned them. And that was a unique situation I had never faced. And but mostly the totality of the situation of all the people trying to kill each other. You read about it. I watched all the John Wayne movies when I was growing up. And, you know, they glorified war. And all the movies glorified the war, build up public support. But you have to be there to appreciate it.
So you say you did a lot of busy work. Is that why you were deployed as well, or did you do different things while you were
No,
deployed?
once we were deployed, we were busy, except for the first month when we got in country and we got all our equipment sorted out and got ready to go. And then we hadn't even been in country a month when I got my first assignment. And that was a little place in, I called I Corps. Vietnam was divided into 4 sections. 1 Corps, 2 Corps, 3 Corps, 4 Corps. But they call it, instead of 1, they call it I Corps. And that belonged mostly to the Marine Corps. They handled that one. And the Army took the rest of the country. But my first assignment was a place called Dong Ha. And it was actually a fairly built-up little base when I got there. Well, we set up our staging facility. That's what it's called, where we're going to take the wounded into. And we're right next to the flight line. So for expediency, to get them on a plane, get them out. But unfortunately, the whole area surrounding it was not secure. We got mortared and 122 millimeter rocket attacks daily, nightly. So you spend a lot of time dodging bullets. But you know what impressed me about all the guys I worked with? That when we got incoming rounds, these soldiers, the Marines or the Army, didn't matter, had already been hurt enough. So all these guys, it was just unanimous. There's no there was no rule that said you had to do it. They would take their flak jackets off and put them over the wounded to protect them even more.
That's awesome. That's amazing. What kind of friendships and camaraderies did you form while serving?
Oh, you can't help it. You become a brotherhood. You all there. You all suffering the possible same fate. You doing the same job. It's almost an unbreakable bond. We're having, as you know, 50th reunion, 50th anniversary reunion. Since we first went to Vietnam in '67. And trouble is, we're getting like World War II. There ain't that many of us left. They can travel and can make these get-togethers. But all they can try to. But it's just, it really is. It's an unbreakable bond. Matter of fact, we just buried one of our own last year. He died from cancer, having been predeceased by 6 months by his own wife and his son.
Oh wow!
It was just rough.
Did you make any like best friends while
Yeah.
you were serving?
He would qualify as a best friend.
Yeah.
All the guys actually from the 21st, most all of them qualify as best friends.
You guys became very tight knit.
And that was the people I spent the most time with in North Carolina, and we moved, like I said, right from North Carolina to Vietnam. Well, it wasn't right there, because in the Air Force and their ingenuity, we traveled in a C-130 with all our gear, our tents and everything, medical equipment and all. We broke down every place we landed. So it took what would have been a quicker trip. It took us over 5 days from North Carolina to get to Vietnam.
While you weren't on mission or performing actual duties or anything like that, what did you do to, I guess, pass the time?
Well, you either slept, which was a valuable commodity if you could get it, and barring that, then we would get together sometimes, several of us, for the impromptu poker game or something of that nature, because I spent 90% of my time in Vietnam, I spent in the field. Now, we had a base camp, Phuket Air Base, and it was not bad. Nice place. After we built it up, we had to build most everything when we got there. Had to build the lockers and everything for the barracks. They had put the shell up, but that was it. And then we had to fill thousands of sandbags to line it with on the outside for protection. And a lot of guys got to go back to Phuket a little more often. And but somehow, I guess they must have had a lot of faith in me. I had spent a lot of time in the field. And we even had what was called a log run. And that was, you'd hop on a C-7A Caribou, slowest airplane in the Air Force. And you would fly to all the Special Forces camps, all the way up to the Thai border. And if they needed somebody moved out, airlifted out, we'd take them out. In the meantime, we doubled as a transport. We hauled a lot of Vietnamese and a lot of fish head and sauce. But you just stayed busy the whole time. You really didn't have a lot of downtime, so to speak.
And what about when you weren't deployed? What about when you weren't deployed?
I mean, working?
And what about when you weren't deployed?
That was, like I said, that was very few times when I wasn't deployed.
Oh, so you spent the majority of your time deployed?
See, I spent when I was at the deployment, actually came from Phuket. That's where our central base was in Vietnam. But again, I didn't see Phuket that much. My deployments were all over the entire country, from the top to the bottom. It just depended on whether they wanted somebody or needed somebody to set up a staging facility, such as we did at Dak To, Quang Tri, Dong Ha, Khe Sanh. I was at Khe Sanh first time in May, I think it was, of '67. I ended up back at Khe Sanh in 1968. Now, I know you're young, so Khe Sanh may not mean anything to you, but it was a hilltop with 3,000 Marines, us, 13 of us, from the 903rd, maybe a couple of few CBs, and that's it. Around the bottom of that mountain was 40,000 North Vietnamese regular soldiers.
Oh, wow.
We were totally cut off. The C-130s could not land. They had the runway targeted. They would shoot them full of holes when they tried to land. So they'd come in and everything had to be kicked out the back door without the plane ever stopping. Just off the deck with a parachute, pull it out the back door, any supplies. But then we couldn't get the supplies until at night when they couldn't see us out there working. But that was a long time. That was a little rough, about the roughest part of the whole trip. Was being trapped on that mountain. And they probed the wire, the concertina wire around the base every night and tried to figure out a way in. They bombarded us constantly. And we brought in a lot of wounded. Now, the first time I was there, the Marine Corps tried to take two mountains adjacent to Khe Sanh, full frontal assault. And we worked for 72 hours without sleep, processing wounded as fast as we could process them. Now, I don't know if you know what the term triage means, but basically it means you play God. You get your wounded in, you go over them, you check, see what the wounds are. The ones who have a 80-20 chance of not making it, they don't get any treatment right then. You go to the ones who can be treated and possibly put back into action. So that's kind of hard for well, it's a little hard on your mind. But and then it was that way everywhere though, except Dak To. We got there late.
What is Dak To?
That was an army battle. It was a village. Most battles were named after the village closest to them. And Dak To was a small village, and it was an army battle. But the 173rd Airborne got almost demolished, wiped out. There were very few left by the time we got there. And I don't know what happened there, why we weren't sent sooner, but it was over. All we got was a bunch of empty boots and bayonets stuck in the ground.
Did you ever get like leave or R&R or anything like that?
Yes, I did, and I took it.
Yes, sir.
They gave you a dream sheet to fill out. Where would you like to go? Military in this infinite wisdom always dangles something in front of you. And so I put down Australia. They just had opened up Australia. I'd never been to Australia. And I said, hey, that sounds like a great place. I'd like to go there. Well, then they come back and told me Australia was full. Yeah, everybody else had signed up for it, apparently. So I went to Penang, Malaysia. Little island, 5 feet wide, 5 miles wide.
Not a whole lot to do there, huh?
Wasn't really a whole lot to do, but you could eat different foods, and you had government subsidized prostitutes. They were there for the benefit of the soldiers. I mean, in all honesty, that's what they were there for. So it takes the pressure off a lot of the guys. But that was the only time I left country. Was that trip to Malaysia. Well, I take that back. I did fly out 2 more times. We worked a plane load of patients. Flew them from Vietnam to Clark Air Base in the Philippines. And we'd leave the patients, get them unloaded off to the hospital. Then we had to stay overnight. So they usually, the military put us up at a place called the Diamond Hotel. But once again, that kind of helped.
Right. How long were you in for?
Hmm?
How long were you in for?
Total service time?
Yes, sir.
4 years.
4 years.
Yeah, I would have stayed longer, but my father had a business, and his health wasn't that good. And he kept writing me, wanting me to come home. I was going to be a lifer. Believe it or not, I actually, aside from almost getting killed, I enjoyed the military. I enjoyed the structure of it. And I had reached a point in my career in 4 years that, that I was, I'm sure that by that point that they had confidence in me that I could do my job very well. And I was just happy to stay in. I was still on flight status and when I came back to the States and flew all over the place, taking care of patients. But back in the United States, most of the people we flew were like slip disc or just people going to a VA appointment and couldn't get there any other way, so the Air Force would take them. You put them on our medical planes and go, a DC-10.
So different scene back in the States then, huh?
Oh, it was, oh God, yes, it was different. See, in Vietnam, you used all your training, all your medical training, in which case I digress for a minute, but go back to where, if a man's leg is completely shattered and gone, you take off what's left and put the tourniquet on it and try to keep him going. You get back to the United States, they won't even let you give a damn shot.
Why not?
I don't know. I never figured that out. It's just like you don't have any skills anymore.
Really?
You left them behind. And I never have figured that out. They wouldn't even let you dispense aspirin. And it was just kind of ridiculous, except on the flights. Now, on the flights, you still do your job. But if you wasn't on a flight, it's just like you didn't have any skill. But I flew most of the time, so I was happy.
Were you in the States when you actually decided to get out of the military?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where were you
I was
stationed at
stationed at Kelly Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. And that's where I met my wife. She was in the Air Force.
Oh, wow, okay.
And I had come back from Vietnam. I went to the NCO club celebrating the fact that I'd come back in one piece. And I went broke because I didn't have much money to start with anyway. And she had just got promoted to sergeant. And she was at the table, and they had all kind of champagne and stuff at the table, all her big friends celebrating her promotion. So I kind of invited myself in, and we've been married ever since.
So how long have you guys been married for?
47 years.
Congratulations.
48 years, I'm sorry. This year was 48. I always get in trouble because I forget.
Give me one second. We'll take a small break, okay?
Okay.
We are back with the recording of Dan Hendrix, and we were talking about your wife of 48 years, I do believe.
That's correct.
All right.
Yeah. She was, could have been a career person herself in the Air Force. And never have asked her really why she didn't want to stay. I think it had a lot to do with her family. She come from a pretty large family. They were poor. They weren't rich, and I think she felt obligated to go back home and try to work for the family and help the family out.
So did you two get out of the military around the same time?
No, she got out first. Okay. And I stayed, and then finally they offered me an early out. You know, that's what happens in the war. They decide they don't need you no more. And they come up with these early outs. You can get out of here now, you can go home. We ain't got room for you in our military. War's winding down.
Yeah.
I was about 4 months behind her.
So how did you return home? Did you fly, drive?
I flew in via Air Force to Washington, state of Washington, McCord Air Force Base. Sorry, I'm getting older. Don't remember as well. And then I transferred from McCord. Well, I back up just a minute because I have to tell you the whole thing. I'll try to make it quick. Before I left country, I had 36 hours in Vietnam, and they put me in a holding area in Cameron Bay, which is the only time in that whole country that I saw the ocean. So I went for a walk on the beach. I got sunburned. Well, I came back. I had nothing with me. Just I had one uniform. They were called 1505s. It was a khaki shirt, short sleeve, khaki slacks, and black shoes. So all my other stuff was full of jungle rot and stuff, and so it was just all written off as a combat loss. I had my shaving kit. And so I got on the plane, and everything was good, but it was a Continental Airlines, and they had to stop to refuel in Japan, in Yokota. And they had to leave the doors open while they refuel if you can't get off the plane. Safety feature. Well, I'm sitting there with sunburn. It's 32 degrees in Yokota and snowing, and I'm freezing to death. So the little stewardess, she apparently noticed that. She found a blanket somewhere and gave it to me. But anyway, that said, we flew into McCord Air Force Base. At McCord, they realized once again, because it was like 40 degrees and rain, and they knew I needed uniform, so they gave me what's called a Class A uniform, dress uniform. Wool coat, wool pants, shirt, tie, the whole 9 yards. So I put that on, but I had to go to SeaTac, catch a flight back to South Carolina. And as I was getting out of the cab at SeaTac, it's where I had my first conversation with certain people who didn't like the war. And I was not a happy camper because I did not like those people. But anyway.
Did you deal with that a lot when you got out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was still going on when I got out. And, you know, all you hippies and everybody else like today protesting Trump, back then they were protesting every serviceman that came home. They'd spit on him, do anything they could to him. They just, it's just young idiots. Have absolutely no sense of decorum about them whatsoever. But, it's different. Different parts of the country are different. And I left there, I made it back home. There was not a single protester in South Carolina. At least I never saw one. Nobody gave me a hard time when I got back to South Carolina.
So how did your family and the community that you were living in receive you when you got back?
Everybody did pretty good. It took me a while, but they seemed to adjust to it well. The fact that I had come back home. I think that was the most part of my parents. They were mostly happy that I came back in one piece. And of course, I went right to work with my father because he had been writing, wanting me to come home and help him with the business. So it was a 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week business. And I went to work running the business for him. And he ended up having to sell it. It was a truck stop, and the so-called oil shortage of the 70s just about put him out of business. So he took the first offer he could get and got out. And I don't blame him. But he told me, I guess you need to do something. And I said, I'll find something. Don't worry about me. And I did. I waited. I wanted to go to school on GI Bill. And courses I had lined up to take. I was either wanted to be a fireman or a policeman. But the fire department was 24 hours on duty and 48 off. It didn't jive with my school schedule. But now law enforcement, I work rotating shifts, and the college was set up for that what was offered in the mornings was also offered in the evenings. So no matter which shift I worked, I could make one of the classes. So that's what I did. And I went to Tri-County Technical College, got an associate's degree in criminal justice. Got hired as law enforcement. Finally, later on, I got my bachelor's degree. So that was basically my civilian life after that. 37 years with the law enforcement.
Thank you very much. Keep them streets safe.
Talking about the military family, my youngest son, my oldest son, had a leg issue. He'd broken a leg playing football in school. The military wouldn't take him. My youngest son, when he died in 2011, he died on 11/11/11, Veterans Day. But he was a staff sergeant. He was a drill instructor in the Army. So he runs in the family.
Not a bad thing to have in a family.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
So are you a member of any veterans organizations?
VFW. They helped me with, of course, Vietnam gave me the gift that keeps on giving, Agent Orange. All the wounded, we have to strip their uniforms down when they come in because they still got hand grenades hanging off of them, and some of them still had their weapons with them. And they're not exactly in too good a shape. They ain't in a good place to have weapons when they came to us. And so we had to deal with that all the time, and that means you were handling their uniforms all the time, straight from the field. Well, these guys are the ones who've been through the docks, but then you can't help but get the docks on you from handling them. And it's just, I may have had this ever since, I don't know. I just started having issues a couple of years ago. And had the Agent Orange test done, came back positive. I had lymphoma. And so, like I said, that's just another part of Vietnam. But I don't hold anybody responsible for it. It just happened. Only thing I'm mad about is they argued with me about a year and a half about me having it. And I have 3 oncologists, and I said, "You're welcome to interview them yourself. You got all my medical records. You know more about me than I know about myself." So they finally agreed. So now I'm a disabled vet, but I don't use that term. I don't have a handicap placard, and I don't park in a handicap parking spot.
So, did the wartime experiences affect your life after the military at all, or?
Yeah, you can't help it. It's not, you watch TV programs about post-trauma. I don't feel like it's that bad. I feel like I get emotional still when I think about all the guys that died. 58,000 people died in Vietnam. 58,000 for a war that we never won. They couldn't even decide on a damn table to settle it. And so, but occasionally I would get a flashback. When I first came back, it was worse. I would be walking down Main Street in my hometown then of Anderson in South Carolina. And in Vietnam, they had just started using whooper type sirens for incoming rounds because the North Vietnamese started using aluminum mortars so they could backpack them better. The original iron mortar, our mortar shell was too heavy, so they came up with aluminum ones. And you may not even hear it hit 50 yards away if it didn't hit metal or something. So they came up with a siren system to sound off when we were getting hit with incoming. Well, I was walking down Main Street and a police car came by, same siren. He hit the siren just as he got beside me, fixing to go on a call. But I didn't realize it came from the police car. I dropped straight to the sidewalk, flat on my face. And then I got up and looked around. Everybody's looking at me like, "What's the matter with you, fool?" It's really funny when you think about it. It does, it still does to this day, in some cases. But it's something I can handle.
And would you like to leave a message to future generations who will view or hear this interview?
Yes, I would. I said, irregardless of how you feel about a particular situation, your responsibility as an American is to support your government in whatever endeavor they ask for your support in. Because when you do not support your government and you're vocal and resistant, then you are giving aid and comfort to the enemy. And that may be a little crude, but that's just the way I feel.
So, thank you very much for your words, and thank you very much for your service in this interview.